Hello, Shelly. Hello, world.
Hi, world. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. So, if you're joining for the first time, this is Move to Amend's weekly gig, Making Sense. And please allow us to unwrap the week for you and make connections as we can to corporate rule and our work trying to pass the We the People Amendment. Uh, Move to Amend is a nonpartisan grassroots coalition working to pass the We the People Amendment, as I just mentioned, which would be a 28th Amendment to the Constitution, clarifying that constitutional rights belong to humans only, not artificial entities such as corporations, and that money is not a form of free speech. And here we are. My name is Millie Harmon. I'm the outreach coordinator. I'm in Northern Arizona, and with me is...
I'm Shelly Williams. I'm the administrative coordinator for Move to Amend, and I'm in Sacramento, California. Hey, Greg. Welcome. I'm getting some coffee poured for me by my roommate.
So I'll start off on a personal note. Woohoo! How about these rising numbers of coronavirus cases? My daycare, I have a 3-year-old son, is closed, waiting a negative test. The husband of my preschool teacher is the art teacher at our local high school, and they've been open about 3 weeks, the school in person. About one child per week, I guess, have tested positive. And I'm not saying kids don't need to be together. I'm not saying we don't need to get creative, but we can't just open these schools, get everybody together as if this is going to change anything. So, I think there's a lot of us out there now, due to different exposures, are, again, trying to, juggle our lives and figure out how to work and raise our kids.
Yeah. Well, Millie and I are both really lucky in a lot of ways because we, work in an environment that is, very understanding and gives us space to be parents in a pandemic. I have a 5-year-old. He was supposed to start kindergarten this year. So we're in California, which has been relatively better. We're going to go into, the latest. I mean, I don't know if we want to just talk about, I think we put some of the COVID stuff later in the agenda, but we could cover it now. So in Sacramento, the capital city of California, which is, supposed to be the place where, terrible things are supposed to happen less frequently. So my kid, his grandmother died in Indiana. So right around the time school was supposed to start and it was going to be distance learning, which was already stressing me out. He went back to Indiana and I was like, you know what, we're just not going to start school. But then, he came back a few weeks ago. And at that time, the school district where we live had a goal of reopening fully the whole district by the end of the year. And I had so much anxiety. I don't want to send my kid into school. I also need childcare. Both of these things are true, but I want to live. And I also, and I don't want to have lifelong complications when I'm raising a kid. So, it's all of our choices right now suck. But with the second spike, I felt really guilty about the sense of relief that I had, knowing that they are going to close the schools again, or they're not going to reopen them, at least not anytime soon. And so this is the position that we're put in, is to be glad that things got bad enough for them to do what they should have been doing and figuring out how to, make it. So I don't know. It's just hard.
Well, and we're making it very personal about, our family's safety and well-being. But as we know, it's not just about staying home and keeping ourselves safe. A good friend made the comparison of coronavirus to glitter, right? If you're sitting at the craft table and somebody's working with glitter, y'all have glitter. Like this is not something that I'm concerned for my child coming home in a safe environment. This is everyone in our life. This is my mail person. This is my neighbor. This is everyone in our lives, somebody that you would bump into in a grocery store. And so, so beyond our own safety, I think we just have to start thinking a little bit bigger. And I mean, how gross is it that media is still giving us such mixed messages?
Mm-hmm.
I called a plumber. I was having some issues and trying to get some work done on my house. And this guy had the nerve to say that if I was going to ask him to wear a mask in my house, that he would rather not take the job. And I mean, how? What gall? Come on now. And the sick thing is, he believed from his heart that this is not anything. And he's been told by, whoever it is in his community, be it his religious leader, be it his, mayor, be it whatever, that's a reasonable way to think about this.
Yeah, so there's like a few bad strains that are going on. There's we've obviously got isolated, sects of people that are getting their information from different places and not, hearing much from outside of their bubble. So we've got, people who are watching Fox and One America and, being told that this is nothing and that even masks are stupid and, false statistics about the death rates, completely ignoring the lifelong complications and organ damage and things, that happen to a lot of people who don't die. They're just, none of this stuff is, so they're in a complete denial. And then we've got people, who are watching mainstream media, but they think that, a curfew makes sense to stop the spread of COVID. Like, I mean, common sense, people. But, when you're being told this by trusted sources, you think, oh, wow, okay, so New York is doing a curfew, Ohio, and then here in California, Gavin Newsom yesterday announced this 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew, which there's no scientific evidence behind a curfew. Does a virus sleep? No, it does not. And, it does nothing, but what it does do is, gives the police a new way to target people. And the people who are going to be targeted, it's probably not going to be me or Millie. But this is gonna lead to, some bad things probably, that just being outside past 10 p.m. Is gonna be illegal.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a hop, skip, and a jump away from martial law. And I definitely fear for Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities the most. These are the people working the jobs that send them out, the most at odd hours, and would make them more vulnerable to, violence in the streets, as, we're still seeing. And I also want to say that, the CDC has continued to downgrade their requirements under pressure from hospital associations and employers. The idea that companies profiting very, very largely right now off of deaths and people getting ill are putting pressure on a regulatory agency that is supposed to keep us safe. And help in instances of, disease control. Come on now. But no, they're getting pressure from these hospital associations who it's up to like 18 hospitals are charging up to like 18 times the cost of care. Imagine that. So $100 treatment and they're going to charge you $1,800. And that's, what's $100 at a hospital. But that ratio, I think it's called the charge to cost ratio, is going through the roof. as these hospitals are packed.
So you're saying that while we're all concerned about, hospitals being inundated and not having enough room, the hospitals themselves want their beds full so they can make the most money.
Well, absolutely. And even if they're not they don't have to try to pack them, right? As long as we keep spreading, their beds are going to be full, but they still are having the opportunity to charge so much more than the actual cost of care, putting people more into debt. Mm-hmm. And, a big thing that Bernie Sanders brought up on the campaign trail is medical expenses are the number one reason for bankruptcy in this country. And that was before the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So we can imagine when you start racking up medical bills, if you're lucky enough to survive, how do you get out of that? And these hospitals also, because they're so understaffed, asking nurses who are asymptomatic but testing positive to come and work.
Yeah, the disconnect between, who's in charge of these hospitals and the workers themselves. I mean, you just go on Twitter and it's like every fifth tweet is a crying nurse begging people to stop and listen.
They still don't have enough masks. Like at a basic level, they don't have equipment to even take care of folks. And the hospitals and, CEOs and everything else are making a lot of money. Make some masks.
And then I think it was yesterday or maybe the day before, our president-elect Joe Biden made it very clear that he's not shutting anything down. He said he's going to shut down the virus, and no one knows what that means. It doesn't mean anything. There's no example so far of any country who has gotten ahead of COVID that didn't do some sort of severe lockdown and pay people to stay home. That is how you do it. That's how it's done. Australia, China did great. Australia, they're now doing another strict lockdown and people are like, oh my God, you can't even walk your dog. But it's going to be like a short thing. Last time they did that, it bought them 7 months of no community transmission. So, these are the things that work, and we're not going to get it here. So I don't know what we're going to do. But, getting Trump out, definitely creates more space for us to, whatever, but we're not the things that actually need to happen. The science, we're not listening to science still.
Well, and also very telling of this incoming administration is some of the appointments he's making, right? For example, Steve Ricchetti, a former big pharma lobbyist that has represented groups that, have been vehemently opposed to Medicare for all and the public manufacturing of prescription drugs. So what does that mean for our healthcare? What does that mean for a possible vaccine and distribution? And it's scary. And that's one, right?
Well, this whole week of the trickling out of cabinet positions, appointees has been pretty gutting, to be honest. And, it's really hard. I'm gonna get personal for a second. The pharmaceutical industry murdered my mom, and it's trying to murder me. So I think a lot of people can see that these appointments on a intellectual and theoretical level are very, corrupt and wrong. Also, what's his name again? Steve or Garcetti. How do you say his name again?
The Steve Ricchetti?
Ricchetti. I wanted to say Garcetti. His brother is a very prominent pharma lobbyist.
They started those groups together.
Yeah, they started them together, and they're saying, in Biden's plan, which, I have zero faith in this, okay? That Biden, had on his platform lowering prescription drug costs. So this this person who is his advisor is going to have to recuse himself from any work in this area because of his brother and his own history in bed with this industry. Why are we here? Why are we here? You know, and so, you know, my mother was one of those people back in the late 90s who, first of all, she got fibromyalgia at the wrong time. It was at the time when people didn't understand it. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know how to treat it. And also, you know, kind of, I think multiple sclerosis had the same trajectory where at first people were like, that's not a real thing and it's every symptom and da 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 da. So she was going through that at that time. So she just was ravaged all of a sudden with tons of pain, and she went to the doctor and they prescribed her OxyContin and told her it was milder than morphine. And I only, you know, we all only learned that this was happening a few years ago. So it was basically like, I knew that, you know, I don't know. It was like I have been recently, you know, it's been confirmed for me that my mother was murdered. She was lied to about a medication that killed her. And, you know, and then now here I am with a 5-year-old. And I learned when I was pregnant that I have a chronic, progressive, and fatal disease. And the treatment for it costs $80,000. And my insurance right now won't cover it. They don't think I'm sick enough. So I don't know what has to happen, how much organ damage. I just don't know when they're gonna, you know, it's a bottle of pills. One bottle of pills that you take over the course of like a month. That's $80,000. So it's scary, you know, it's scary to me that this is where we are when so many people have come forward. We're all like getting rid of our shame about, you know, being poor and underinsured or uninsured. And we're all coming forward and telling our stories. And this is still what they're doing to us. So, you know, that one hit me viscerally. And
it was just last month, right, Shelly, that Purdue Pharma pled guilty to federal criminal charges for making OxyContin when they well knew that it was addictive, and then kept pumping out their drug reps everywhere to incentivize those doctors to get those to their patients. And they pled guilty. And they got a tap on the wrist. They got a fine. They can pay that fine yearly. What do they care?
There's actually like a real person, the Sackler. I think he actually died of natural causes recently, but there's like email evidence of a person, not, this isn't just some like of a person with a name who said things in an email where it was literally like, yeah, we know it's super addictive, but just tell the doctors it's milder than morphine, and no accountability. I don't know. It's just, it's enraging. So this is definitely, like an emotional issue for me.
So let's move over to another personal and gross appointment by the Biden administration of the Louisiana Representative Cedric Richmond, who has taken the most fossil fuel money of any Democratic member of Congress. So I'm sorry, did I just forget what happened when people were in the streets because our world is dying and young people are getting it and we were pushing the Democratic Party left and all of this was happening on the stage like a big beautiful play. What happened?
I don't know.
That is
Biden, at one point during his campaign, pledged to not take any fossil fuel money. And I think he sort of got around that in some kind of weird loophole-y way. But then you just appoint the guy who took the most, and technically you didn't take any, but giving power to somebody who is completely in the pockets of them is arguably worse.
And we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, we saw him on the debate stage and with him and Trump, and they're like, no, I love fracking. No, I do. And it was like, that'll never end. crying whole populations on the globe, right? Because this is happening. So some good thing happening though is that Sunrise and a whole bunch of indigenous grassroots organizations and groups were in New York City yesterday, occupying, actually like putting down some mandates, calling out the Biden administration, saying like, you know, we have you on the hook here. Like, you have to follow through. We put you in office. The folks hardest hit by climate crisis, Black, Brown, Indigenous, and poor communities, put this dude in office. So he's got to follow through, right?
I mean, no, he doesn't.
At least that's what we have to keep holding their feet to the fire. And yeah. I think that people turning out to demand this and actually acknowledge, well, wait, this is what we want, but your record says something totally different.
Another thing came out that I speaking of fracking, we didn't discuss this when we were talking about what we would discuss, but another thing came out recently, and all the discussion about, you know, fracking and how many people are downplaying how serious it is, you know, and environmental racism. There was a study recently that expectant mothers in the Eagle Ford Shale region of South Texas are 50% more likely to have a preterm birth if they live within 3 miles of a fracking site with active flaring. And, you know, this is a predominantly Hispanic community, which usually fracking sites are not in white areas. And I don't know. I don't really have anything to say about that other than, you know, the denial around how horrific fracking is for us as humans and for the planet is just, I don't know. It's really upsetting.
Yeah, and coal plants, and I mean mineral extraction, and I mean it all has consequences for the immediate area around that. I mean, of course, for our globe in general, but I think so. More on that, because I think there has been like this really kind of gross sense of relief since you know, well, Biden hasn't exactly been called, but has been called as president-elect. That, you know, we did good, like we got here, things are gonna go easier now, but like I think the communities hardest hit are still in the streets saying no, actually. So as we all saw the back-to-back horrible hurricanes that hit Central America, it was like 2 weeks in between. I think at least 30 people have been killed, like devastated, you know, whole entire communities and cities. And people are rising up, right? They are in Mexico since Indigenous People Day. Women are occupying. 120 Indigenous families have been occupying the National Institute of Indigenous Peoples to demand the continued. You know, that demand something. They've been neglected. It's a pandemic. We're facing more and more environmental crises. And all of our governments are just sort of like, you know?
I mean, they're constitutionally incapable of being any different. You know, they can't. It's like a fundamental, it's like structural, especially here in the US. But I mean, you know, elsewhere there's similar, you know, structural things, but you know, we're dealing with two private corporations, the DNC and the RNC, right? These are private corporations. They're never going to be able to do anything different than what they're doing unless their entire model changes, and that's the reality of it. We're only going to get lip service.
Well, they have what real insight? Somebody said right here, you know, I don't. Oh, here. Well, we're getting a comment.
Ooh, Jessica, good. I did not know this.
Well, let's go to this. So speaking of bad appointments, Ezekiel Emanuel, a Biden pick for COVID response, believes that a life over 75 is unnecessary and a waste. He's a eugenicist. So there you have it. Here's more yummy things coming down the pike. We have another person who said in the comments, that I don't see much change coming with a politician not obligated in writing to the people, which is very true, right? Once you get in office, what obligation do you have to us legally?
None. So there's a lot of people I think who are well-meaning and agree with us, and believe that, we need to hold his feet to the fire and all of that. But folks, it's going to take all of us, and it's going to take like higher levels of direct action than we've seen. Although I think we're also underestimating because our media isn't covering it. I think people don't understand the level of direct action that we're currently at and still at, but it still needs to increase. And so we all just need to put our boots on for this.
Well, and I want to go back to obligation, because when we talk about politicians being obligated, we wish it were to us, but it's not, right? Because it's to the corporate lobbyists. And when we made, money a form of free speech, what does an individual's voice have? Nothing. So they have obligations. It's to the corporate ruling elite. And so I think that is a big reason that we do this work, because we do fundamentally believe that without taking out corporate rule, taking away their constitutional rights, the constitutional rights that were court created, we have very little power to say, hey, politicians, listen to us. We're poor, but we got people, right? And that's what I think that you're saying, Shelly, is people are in the streets and we're not actually getting to see coverage of just exactly the amount of mass that we're talking about.
Because we got to escalate our tactics, right? Like we do, what we need to start thinking, how are we going to get the attention of these politicians as well as, the media? And that's going to, take a lot of creative organizing, and it's going to take a lot of dedication, but it's the only way that we're going to have any chance whatsoever of forcing any amount of accountability from the people who we elected and who owe us so much.
No, and media goes back to the same thing, right? Because there's no such thing as a public service announcement anymore. Everything is, broadcasted by for-profit things. You even look at the funding for places like, NPR, and it's like, wow, you're running an ad for Monsanto. I feel really comfortable with this coverage, So it definitely fundamentally, media also is just like, a few giant corporations at this point.
Yeah.
And social media, let's praise it for, offering a lot of back, people's organizing methods, but also that the more reliant we get on it, and the more reliant we get on it as we're socially distanced, the more ability that corporations have to drop in and censor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they could take it away from us at any time, if they start to see it as being too effective of a tool for us to organize, we will lose it. And yeah, so I don't know. It's scary. There are alternative platforms, and I think that we really do. I mean, there was a period of time a while back that like Mastodon was a place where folks who are more on the left were thinking of moving to. The right has moved to Parler, and it actually has taken off. It's pretty like solid, and they're all on there in their little bubble, feeding each other tons of disinformation. And all of that. But it's probably also time that we look for some sort of alternative space, because Twitter, as great as it is right now and as powerful of a tool as it is right now, that's not the way Twitter wants to be used. So they're going to find a way to curb it.
Yeah, I mean, so rare, and planning ahead, like thinking, okay, well, we have this, how are we going to like create some sort of, widespread platforms that we all, but it's so hard to like look into the future to create these things when we're trying so desperately to just pay our rent, And so I'll turn us into, we're moving into, we'll call it Harvest Holiday, where so many people across the country are planning to visit family. We've all been cooped up. Everybody misses everybody. We all get nervous, of course, in times of death and sickness, that we want to be near our folks. That makes a lot of sense. But I also sort of want to take the opportunity to underline the immense risks that people are taking. There have been, there was a great protest outside of LaGuardia Airport by the SEIU, sort of demanding better conditions within the airports themselves during this season. And I think that this is this is people asking for barely anything, right? Like, please give us the bare necessities to survive through the season. And still not being matched by anything from these huge airline corporations. And
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, just saying that, and also I want to call myself out here, because I can say it's all well and good to sit home and socially distance, but that is not something that we all have the privilege of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is real. Yeah. And so I think I really want to say that, for people to truly be able to stay home and curb the spread, we need rent and mortgage relief. We need extended unemployment. We need a stimulus for everybody. Otherwise, it's unfair to shame the hairdressers and the tattoo artists and everyone else who have the misfortune of actually having to hope that people take the risk and get those services.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And everybody, if you have a plane ticket, cancel it. I'm like, honestly, just going to say right here that there are a lot of people who are very smart and who I respect in my life, who maybe after yesterday, after the CDC finally took a strong stance and said, do not travel for the holidays. And I hope that, that if nothing else, that will stop people. But I'm just going to name, without naming names, that there are way too many of you who think that you're the exception and that you can get to travel home to your family. But yeah, for there's so many people who don't have the option to stay home. But the worst thing that we could do right now is be hopping on planes and traveling around. Stop it. Don't do it. Quit it. This is like a level of denialism that I'm seeing in people who actually grasp and understand the seriousness of COVID, but for whatever reason, they think they're the exception. So that's my 2 cents on that.
And this was interesting. This was just chatted to me. More than 900 employees at the Mayo Clinic, a top research hospital that is based in Rochester, Minnesota, have contracted COVID-19 in the last 2 weeks. At a press briefing on Tuesday, Dr. Amy Williams, Dean of Clinical Practice at the hospital, said the vast majority of staff who were infected, 93%, were not infected at work, according to the St. Paul Pioneer Press. Most who were infected at work contracted the virus while eating without a mask during their breaks. There's that glitter. There's that glitter, guys, everywhere. Don't go to restaurants. Stop it.
And I also want to name explicitly that, we really are having a crisis in leadership. It's not just Joe Biden. It's Dr. Fauci or Fauci, however you say his name. He has said that there shouldn't be a shutdown until things get really, really bad. So apparently things aren't really, really bad. And that's why we're not talking about a shutdown. So I don't know what really, really bad means to these people. And then we've got Gavin Newsom, my governor, who was recently scandalized because he went to this large public dinner. What would the French Laundry? First of all, it makes the fact that he's doing a curfew from 10 to 5 an absolute joke, when it was already a joke. But it just makes it so that the people who we really need to start taking this seriously, which is the right wing, they have all this fodder to just laugh at all of the discrepancies in Democrats' words and their actions. And that is actually makes me so much angrier than the people who are being misinformed, are the people who allegedly understand what's going on and choose to make it a joke.
Well, and that's why I wouldn't just put it all on the right, because I live right near Sedona, this total new age, supposedly progressive place where, they definitely have this also self-righteous mind thought that they don't have to wear masks, that it's not doing anything, that this is all a conspiracy theory and blah, blah, blah. And that comes with the amount, these people are educated. I mean, if we look at the population demographic, these are not people without the information. And as Shelly is saying, those are the people who need to acknowledge and take their privilege and stay at home and wear a mask.
Yeah. So Robin Sunbeam, she's Mendocino, right?
Woohoo! Mendocino! Shout out! Hi, Robin!
The social Darwinist aspects of spreading the virus. The strong shall prevail and the weak shall perish. It is natural selection. And that goes back to the appointment that Jessica brought up. That was news to me. Rahm Emanuel's brother, who believes that people over 75, and that is the sentiment that you see from the right wing too. And you just hear if you're so scared, stay home. And it's really terrifying. It's really, really, really terrifying. The social Darwinist aspect is extremely real, and we have to push back against that super hard. That's my... Thankfully, Ebola did not originate in a high traffic area like COVID. Yeah. So what else? Let me look at the agenda here.
I just wanted to clarify the demands because I didn't, when I was talking a little bit earlier about the occupation in New York. So also yesterday, Indigenous radical justice and climate activists staged an occupation outside of the Democratic National Convention in Washington, calling on President-elect Joe Biden to take immediate climate action and to approve the Green New Deal. Advocates are also calling for a cabinet free of lobbyists and others with close industry ties, which obviously that's all they're giving us at this point. But I'm just wanting to sort of underscore again, people are rising up. We are saying out loud, we know what you're trying to give us, and it's not going to work. But with that, what is also happening, I think, is again this rise of state violence trying to push that down. And we're seeing that not just in the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where to begin on that? So Peru is currently going through an uprising being met with state violence. Not like super smart on all the details yet, but essentially there was an effort to You might be able to explain it better than I.
Well, I think we're not that well versed, but what we are seeing in Peru is a lot of corruption going on. A Congress who ousted a president, people trying to rise up and saying that's ridiculous, and then being beaten. 2 people have died.
Yeah.
It is absolutely brutal. And again, these people are not asking for that much.
Yeah, and these are countries that are ruled by major neoliberal politics, just like we are. It looks a little different, but it's still the same politics essentially guiding them. And you could argue the United States is fully behind what's happening there too.
We're so used to looking at like these coups in other countries and this severe oppression and the beating of protesters, and we're like, oh, well, that's South America. That's not the U.S. But then we're looking at the footage, of movements and them being, really violently pushed back down, and the footage looks very, very much the same.
Mm-hmm. And they're going through they have the same kind of social conditions that we have here, which is, the COVID health crisis and economic crisis. All those things are happening here. They're happening there. It's really, really, really the same stuff, with the details, a little different in each country. I think someone thought that their comments were deleted, and I'm not. I think everything. I don't know. I don't think we do that, but.
Here, this is a good one. Another aspect of social Darwinism is wealth. The richer you are, the less the laws apply to you. The rich are above the law. The less wealth you have, the more the law applies to you, and the punishment is fierce. This culture is pervasive among the police, which is why they overlook white-collar crime and are severe to poor minorities.
So that's,
go on with that. It goes back to the origin of police. What was it to do? It was to protect property. What was that property? That property was slaves.
Mm-hmm.
And so in its history is ingrained, they are protecting the property of white elite, and with violent methods. And of course, that property was people.
Right. And I think Gavin Newsom is such a great microcosm for this, to show, here he is going out with his very wealthy, probably mostly white friends at this French laundry place, unmasked, eating together, and then turns around and enacts a curfew. He apologized and said I was wrong. It doesn't, he's mad he got caught. He doesn't really care. This is the mentality of wealthy people. They think they're the exception. They think their people are probably, cleaner. I don't know what goes on in their head, but they really do think that they're, not the same as the rabble. And so this curfew, is really only going to be enforced in low-income communities of color. It's not going to be enforced in the gated communities. It's not going to be enforced in the places where Gavin Newsom lives and where his friends live. So it's pretty infuriating and really illustrative of that duality. And welcome, Yolanda. And there's so many people. I didn't say hi to so many people who said hi. So sorry about that.
We're terrible. We're terrible at this moment. Keeping up. Apologize. But somebody just before did say, the state protects private property over human values. We've seen this time and time again. And we see this within our prison industrial complex so often. Another thing that happened this week was Ronnie Long, a man who served 44 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. It came out that the state withheld evidence, DNA evidence, that would have set him free. that recently came out. He was freed from prison, yet the governor is still unwilling to pardon him.
Yeah.
Why is that? I mean, we have the evidence. What is it about our culture that incentivizes the, imprisonment of people, especially Black men? It is such a continuation of our founding. And okay, just to dive a little deeper into what's going on in prisons right now, 1/4 of the prison population has tested positive. Now, tested. So those are people who have access to tests, which is pretty rare within having access to any medical attention within prison or jail is pretty low chances. You don't get very good served, obviously. And so to think that number is actually probably pretty high, much higher than 1/4. But that alone, 1/4 of the prison population, and in such close, quarters, is so sad. And to think how many prisons are now for profit in our country. And when we start, and then these prison corporations have unbelievable sway and influence on the sentencing of these inmates, it gets really scary because we have a whole bunch of people possibly dying in prison that could have been released had there not been such pressure from the private prison industry to keep their beds full.
Yep. Working in concert with, the crime bill that our president-elect wrote that, makes the penalties and the seriousness of crimes, like things that are not, they're making things felonies that actually did not hurt anybody. And so people, are languishing and dying because of the trumping up of everything. So all these things work in concert. And Robin mentioning the 13th Amendment freed the slaves except for criminals who may be punished with bondage. So, our Constitution still has legalized slavery in it, in case you didn't know.
Yes, we are colonialists at heart. We continue to prove that. Pompeo spoke at an Israeli settlement in Palestine last week. And this is pretty, even as much as in the US, we glorify Israel and all of their action. It is pretty unheard of for someone to actually speak from the settlements, acknowledging that as Israeli land when it is not by the UN, not by anyone. It was stolen land. And I guess this comes just back to that whatever sense that we have of dominance and denial of indigenous people's rights.
Yeah, it's just a sign of the emboldenment, right? The whole Trump administration took stuff that nobody was saying the quiet part loud, and now the quiet part is being said loud. It doesn't mean that it wasn't being said before Trump. That's a level up for sure of emboldenment that is horrific.
God, where is he? Trump just hasn't been around to say anything. I would hate to be around him personally. I can't imagine anyone in his life must be so on edge,
At this point, I think people were worried for a while that there was some plan of a coup. But I think at this point, we can all just maybe be a little entertained by the meltdown.
He's in a bunker sucking on a Prozac lolly. That's what's happening right now.
Yeah. So it seems more and more, with the Georgia thing that it's just, there's no leg for them to stand on. It's scary how many people believe that there is. So that's what we're really up against, is not Trump, but, the however many people are insulated in that little One America News Network information route. So we'll have to deal with those people, but Trump's gone.
Let's see, we just got another comment. Senate GOP approved even more Trump judges in spite of his election loss. The Senate has confirmed 6 district court nominees since the election, including a 33-year-old attorney with little trial experience who was rated not qualified by the American Bar Association. The move broke a 123-year-old tradition against voting on judicial nominees of an outgoing president of the defeated party during a lame duck session.
And I want to say, I don't think it was just GOP. I think there were Democrats who also voted for this for no reason. What's the reason? Why did you do that? It's a lame duck and it's Trump. And what is going on here, folks?
Well, and we're seeing a system that doesn't work for us. If that's possible, something's wrong. If there is no, you know what I'm saying? That this shouldn't be possible. Why are there so many appointed judges? If this is a democracy and these people hold so much power over creating law and precedent.
Yeah, so the fact that judges are appointed is supremely undemocratic to begin with. And then the fact that our Democratic senators are appointing the worst, most undemocratic people. I mean, I know we're, little d, big D confusing things, but just the irony of it, it's enraging. Yeah, so we can't, we don't have a resistance, that's for sure. So let's not get that twisted. The Democrats played they've been voting for Trump appointees steadily the whole time. So why would they stop
now? Should we ask for some questions? We do have a couple of good news hurrahs before our announcements, but we do want to make space if anyone wants to put us in the hot seat.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know what to say to this comment about demonizing wealthy people. I don't know that, I'm not sure that I agree with the analysis that we can't talk about class with, and be fearful of offending people who could help us. And then that kind of turns it into being our fault somehow. So I am going to push back on that a little bit. I don't think that all wealthy people are terrible people, but I do think that if we can't talk in terms of class and who is more likely to behave in certain ways than others, I don't, that it's just a framing that we kind of have to use to tell the truth. And if anybody feels that they're being demonized, when people bitch or complain about white people, I don't tend to take it personally or think, oh my gosh, you said something about white people, so I'm going to withhold my support from you. So any person who is of means who would do that is not on our side to begin with. So that's my feeling on that. If you know that that's not you, then that's not you. That's my feeling on that.
Well, and our approach at Move to Amend is to look at the systemic problems. And wealth inequality is a systemic problem that is brought about by, a long, long history of elevating the wealthy over the poor working class. And so, no, we're not bashing all wealthy folks. And certainly we all have a role, and whatever you can do in your place, maybe it's not phone banking, maybe it's not going out into the street, maybe it is writing a check, and that's a role. But it doesn't mean that we don't need to be critical of this class and wealth inequality that has been handed down and handed down and handed down. We need to just start talking about this American dream that you can go from poor to rich in a lifetime as, pretty farcical, especially if you are a woman, non-binary, transgender, people of color, indigenous. It's just not real. And so we just don't want to sort of, glorify that dynamic and call it out as it is.
Yeah, I mean, as a person who is working class and has been and came from a working class background, I don't really know how not to talk about it in these terms because I don't have the luxury of pretending it doesn't exist. I think it tends to be people who are in higher classes than I am who get off put by that. But working class people are openly mocked and made fun of, and poor people, that's been the way that it's been from the beginning. So we're all used to it. And I think people who have means maybe are not used to it. And this is the first time that they're kind of experiencing that and not having being classy always being considered a positive and superior thing, which is how it's been most of my life. It's only been recently that people feel like they can talk about this. So,
and I think a really good example, and what we just got slapped in the face with, is rent control, which is an example of a position that was very much of a line of income, whether you supported it or not. And I have had the honor, frustration of working in circles with organizers who are just above that income line. Mm-hmm. And actually supported not passing rent control because, that would actually make their, it goes up every year, right? So we are very wary of sort of acknowledging or not acknowledging the moments where wealth really slaps people in the face.
Yeah, so let's talk about California. So California, the liberal bastion of America, right? Where it's, lots of people are Democrats. A lot of those Democrats are economically comfortable too. And so we had, rent control here on the local level in Sacramento where I live, and then also on the state level, they were complementary. The state level one was repealing a limit to rent control, and the one locally would have enacted full rent control and just cause eviction. So I helped organize on those campaigns, and I did literature drop, and it was mostly renters and tenants who were doing all of this organizing work, and our Democrat friends did not back us up. They weren't there for us. They voted against it. And I don't really know why. I mean, I guess I do, but I don't, it's really, I don't know. I have emotions about that because I invested a lot into it. Plus I'm somebody who's been displaced 2 times. And it's, it's people who own homes or have a landlord friend who are Democrats and ostensibly are on my side, but they voted against me not being displaced again with my small child, which is like something that could happen again. So I hope that helps illustrate, that we do need to talk about these things and what solidarity really looks like.
But the wealth is created through the military-industrial complex, whose weapons advance colonial and neoliberal interests, don't you think?
I sure do.
Yes, we certainly do.
Yeah, that's wealth is created off of sick people and people in prison. But I would say we didn't really talk about the military-industrial complex, which I think, even dwarfs those in terms of wealth creation that does not get distributed.
and also to go back, I mean, I don't want to harp on it too much, but when speaking in terms of classes, are we in our culture are ingrained to think that somehow other people gaining more rights is going to take it away from me. Other people gaining more safety is going to take it away from me. Other people, I think often, because there are so many, moneyed corporate interests at play, we're pitted against each other as classes to say, you can't have all that because I need some of it and there isn't enough, and you can't take that away from me because I've worked hard for it. And that is at its heart what we need to say. That is not true. There should be enough healthcare. There should be enough. We should be all able to get into affordable housing without other people's retirement being on the line because they're dependent on rental income.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much, I think, that and this happens generationally, I think, a lot too, where we are made to think that, like, both of our successes cannot happen together.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was a lot of, I think there was a lot of misinformation that was pumped out about rent control, where people thought that their friend who, has 1 or 2 units, but that the law didn't impact those people. It impacted, landlords that had a lot of property. It was just very hard to fight back against the propaganda. So that's why we, if people are, people who are retired, and, have resources and generally agree with us, it would be really cool if those people would come out and stand in solidarity with us when we need them to, which is in times like rent control. And this is where sometimes the Democrats that have more money, this is where the class divide shows, is they voted against us having like a right to housing out of fear that they or their friends would have their pocketbooks harmed.
Okay, so well, we're at an hour. Thank you all so much for engaging in this with us. I do want to bring your attention to a couple ways that you can get involved with Move to Amend. The first, of course, if you have not, is to sign our petition. This is an organizing tool. This is not just another frivolous thing we need you to sign your name to. We actually use this to bring to our representatives to say this many people in this district have signed the petition. We use this when we approach organizations to ask for endorsements. We say this many people, in the state support this. So it's a really helpful tool. You'll also be added to our mailing list to find out all of the other future fabulous things that we are up to. I think Alfonso will be sharing that link. There you go. And then I also want to turn your attention to our movement education program. This is the 3rd rendition. All of these times has been adding more beautiful, pertinent resources, fine-tuning, sort of, working it to meet the needs. And it also allows for you to create a solidarity organizing plan for you and your community at the end of it. Takes you through people's movement histories, really allows you to dig in deep into your own analysis and perspective on what anti-oppression and anti-racist organizing is. So I really, really encourage you to check it out. This can be done as an individual or a group. But I think now is the time to connect issues. We are seeing people in the streets actually, connecting climate to racial justice, to corporate rule, to the need for housing and medical coverage. So if you are able, this is a really, really great tool to give you what you need to get into community, connect these groups, make some change happen.
Yes, and also, in the past we've mostly done this internally in our affiliate groups, which many of you are part of, who are tuning in, but many of you are not. but you might be part of other groups that you're working with. And we've seen, our affiliate groups who have gone through the movement education program together really level up in their solidarity organizing in their community, and which, makes you more relevant and build power and coalition. But whatever you're doing in your community, if you're part of another group that isn't moved to amend, this is still a really good tool and a really great thing that you all can do together and increase, your solidarity and reach in your own community. And then if you're on your, if you're on your own, it's, for the first time, something that people can do as individuals. So we really want to see people taking advantage of that. But we're really proud of it. And we've been doing this for many years now, and it's been amazing. I wanted, someone has brought up a couple times Piketty's book, The Section Slave and Colonial Societies. And I just want to lift up that Piketty is a great author. And there's also, if you're not a reader, which some of us have a hard time with that, there's a documentary on Netflix now of his book, Capital in the 21st Century, and it's super good, and I super recommend it. It's pretty new, and I was kind of surprised that they made a documentary on Netflix based on a Piketty novel. So just a plug.
Okay, we are also gonna shamelessly plug you for money, because we are grassroots as it gets. And in fact, our staff has been working on a volunteer basis for the majority of this pandemic.
I'm a volunteer right now.
Woo woo! Which is really, being dependent on unemployment. So what it is, without any sort of aid from Congress in stimulus has been challenging for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so we do need your support financially to keep this movement going. The best way for us to budget and plan what we're able to do is if you become a sustaining donor. This could be a small amount every month, but it allows us to predict a little better how we can plan our programming and fund things. Also to say, donation is not the only way that you can get involved, quick and easy, but it is certainly not the only way. Conversations, education is the fundamental thing in organizing that we rely on individuals such as yourself to continue doing in your own lives, with your neighbors, with your family. The best thing that we can do to push the We the People amendment is connect it to the hard-hitting truths in people's lives. Why are you facing, connecting those to corporate rule? Mm-hmm. And I think that it really comes down to conversations. We are not given the tools, certainly within any civics class, to figure this out on our own, and need that opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. So, we've had a lot of ebbing and flowing lately because there's, a lot of people who are longtime supporters of ours who were hard hit by, 2020 and had to pull back. Those are people who are still talking to their neighbors and family and friends because they're really invested and believe in this, but they had to pull back their resources. So anyone who's tuning in, if you're in a position to give us $5, $10, $28 a month for the 28th Amendment, I'm the person who takes a lot of these calls from folks who have to discontinue their monthly donation because they lost income or whatever. And so I feel like maybe we can do a little changing of the guard here. And for folks who are in a position, we really need you to step up and take their place, because we are always going to be grassroots funded. We will disappear entirely before we ever sell out. But if we don't have grassroots support, financial support, then that's what will happen. So help us not get to that point. But yeah, Millie's back on. She's in Arizona where the unemployment, is terrible. And so she, we were able to hire her back on. but we're still, tight, and we're trying to build up that cushion so we can keep going. And I would like to be back on staff by the end of the year. So help me do that.
And we had, we're facing a really unique challenge this year in fundraising. Not only was it a election cycle, it is a pandemic. And we can't actually go talk to anybody. We can't hold fundraisers. We can't do any of the fun silent auctions, raffles, those kind of things that we're used to doing to liven up some fundraising. Mm-hmm. So we are going to be encouraging, I think, more and more some peer fundraising where maybe you are not able to give that much yourself, but if you ask, 4 of your friends, perhaps within that they could also chip in, and that goes back to the value and need for education to continue to push this issue to the forefront in people's minds.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So that you can educate and fundraise at the same time, but we really do need you all to be stepping up for that, because all the ways that we have been able to do this in the past successfully, we don't, we're just in a whole new landscape now, and we're trying to figure it out. So we really need y'all.
And in speaking, I want to plug one more way to get involved, because we're just sort of forming this out of another caucus, is that we want to be forming an environmental caucus, which specifically works to connect groups working within the environmental justice world, to connect, to move, to amend, and see how, definitely passing this amendment is going to help, of course, pass any protections for the environment, or, demand any sustainable energy. So if you have any interest in putting those things together, and working sort of an advocate in both spaces, then please let us know. And, we know as organizers, one of the spaces where corporate rule is just so blatant is within, fossil fuel rules all scheme of our lives.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little less eloquent as we move on, but you get it. Talk to us about the new Move to Amend Environmental Caucus.
Yeah, so you can email us if you have any questions about any of the things that we've mentioned. I mean, we told you exactly where to go to donate, but, you can also, if you have questions about any of the other things that we've talked about, info@movetoamend.org. And then our phone number, if you want to call us, is area code 916-318-8040. And we can, get you plugged in any way you want to get involved. If you want to do local organizing, if you want to, anything. You might have a brand new idea that we haven't even talked about. So I just want to reiterate.
A couple of new volunteers from the Pennsylvania area. I apologize, I'm not very familiar with that, but please write us and we will connect you with those other, volunteers.
And Linda just said we also have a labor caucus, and anyone who has a passion for the nexus of corporate rule and labor, especially in light of like what we've seen with Prop 22 and how that's going to be spreading across the country. Organized labor has never been more endangered. And so
just for use of not in California, Prop 22 was removed the employee status of gig workers, completely leaving them vulnerable and, just shit end of the stick in terms of working for basically pennies for mega corporations.
Yeah, they'll never be able to organize now. So that's what happened. The name of the documentary that I mentioned earlier, Thomas Piketty, Capital in the 21st Century. So Capital in the 21st Century. It's really, really good. And Linda just put her email address up to reach out to her. I guess if you're interested in organized labor, she is in leadership on that caucus. So she put her email address there, lgillison2@gmail.com, if you want to get involved in the labor caucus.
And this is one of our most active caucuses. They put out a lot of resources, really helpful in analysis. I do encourage you, if you have any inkling, to contact Linda and get involved in that.
And they're also the group that is in charge of getting endorsements. So if you're part of any kind of labor council or group that you could help get an endorsement for Move to Amend, that would also be amazing. And get in touch with Linda.
All right.
I don't know. This has been a long one.
Listen, we just are full of it.
Mm-hmm. This was an emotional one for me. So thanks, everyone. I talked about a lot of personal stuff in this, and I appreciate you all giving space for us to make those connections on a personal level.
So come back next week. This time, we're going to give you some more fabulous organizers with a lot to say. I don't know who it is.
But we are doing it. It's not off for Thanksgiving or holiday.
Well, we should have that up for the now. Well, we'll post it.
Yeah, we'll post it. We'll let you know.
Sorry for that confusion. Anyway, well, thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget, donate, educate, sign the petition, and keep watching.
Woo!
Love you all.